Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Journey to Greatness. Day 300 with David McDonald, the GOAT. Man, not too much time left, you guys. 65 days and counting. All right. Good morning, everybody. Auntie Louisa, good morning. All right. I will see you all on the other side. We're going to get into our meditation routine. All right, my friends, welcome back. So we just finished our meditation routine. Who is that? Yeah, it's on. Hi, Liz. Good morning. What's up, everybody? Yeah, we're on. We're live. We're definitely live. So we're going to get into our reading routine here for 15 minutes for those who are just joining us for the first time. And I will see you all on the other side. Alrighty, welcome back. So we just finished our reading routine, and now we're getting into our journaling routine. In the journaling routine, I usually like to write about what I'm most grateful for, and in the morning, that is waking up and being in exceptional physical, mental, and spiritual health. And then any goals or aspirations that I wish to document or write down, I go ahead and jump into those also. So if you have questions about any of that, let me know after the session, and I will see you all on the other side.
Mhm.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Friday, Melda. Howdy. Good morning. Okay, so we're introducing a new story today, and we're currently reading the English Standard Version of the Bible. One or two reasons. First reason is I've always wanted to read the Bible from start to finish. And similarly to wanting to always wake up early and be super productive, I've always wanted to do that. And so this year, we only have, for anybody who's joining us for the first time, we only have 65 days left. So 2 months and 5 days left, roughly, to continue waking up early, and we will have finished year one. Now, I already know that we're not going to get through the entire Bible, obviously, before 365, hits, because we have 1,700 pages that we have to surf through, and we're currently on page 100. But we just jumped out of Genesis and we introduced Exodus. Now, totally different breath, totally different vibe than in Genesis. Genesis was pretty interesting. It was introduction of Abram or Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which pretty much are the sons in three generations of the beginning of time. They introduced the story of Adam and Eve, and pretty much like the descendants of each of these main characters and what that looked like, and how people took and women for wives, and what the work situation was like. And so in the last pages of Genesis that we just finished, Joseph actually became pretty much the assistant vice president of all of Egypt, and he was a Hebrew from the land of Canaan, which was very different. But he was able to interpret dreams, and so long story short, Joseph, who's the son of Isaac, who's the son of Abram, Abraham, because they got promoted by the Lord, into their new name. So Abram was he's the grandfather of time, essentially, and he was promoted by God to Abraham because he dedicated his life to serving the Lord. And so long story short, God said, okay, hey, Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph, I will forever bless you and your sons, for pretty much for all eternity, to rule over the lands. And he gave that deliverance, and he gave that promise to them. So Joseph ends up going from being locked up in prison to being the Pharaoh's primary advisor, and helps Egypt surpass 7 years of great times and 7 years of famine. And then how he got there in the first place is he was sold by his brothers. His brothers then lied to his father Isaac and told him that he had been killed. And then so later on, the brothers returned to Egypt, obviously, because there's no food anywhere. And the only place that has food is Egypt. And it's all by the fact that Joseph was able to read and interpret the Pharaoh's dream. And therefore, they worked together to collect all the grain in the harvest years, this, that, and the other. So everything is pretty cool. But now we're introducing the story of, so that was a really cool like fusion between Egypt, Pharaohs, and Hebrews, right? And so now you have Israelis. Israel increases greatly in Egypt. So these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. And so they go into all that. Now, a little bit different vibe here. So you have the land of Canaan. You have Goshen, which is where the Pharaoh and all of the elites of Egypt live, right? You have Egypt down here in the bottom left. You have Sinai. You have Midian over here in the bottom right. And then, like I said, Canaan, near the Mediterranean Sea. So Canaan is where Isaac, Abraham, and Joseph all came from. And so, again, in the last story coming out of Genesis, we saw that they were that Egypt and the Hebrews were actually, one and the same. In this, right out the right in the introduction, they make it very clear that Egypt is not rocking with Israel or anybody coming from, anybody coming from anything having to do with Israel. Exodus in transition means, or in translation means exit, to exit. And so that's what we're getting into. So the new Pharaoh oppresses Israel. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph, right? So who did not know that story coming out of Genesis, because there's so many great things that, pretty much that Joseph did for Egypt. And he pretty much saved Egypt from going extinct. He said to his people, behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them. Let them, lest they multiply. And if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from our land. Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and in all kinds of work in the field. In all of their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. When you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women, and see, check this out. Look how nasty this is. And see, when you serve as a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them on their birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them to do, but let the male children live. And so you have the Israelites, pretty much the people of Israel, or of Israeli descent, are now procreating essentially under the Pharaoh's rule, and he's not feeling it because he's thinking that they're going to take over. So then you have the birth of Moses, which is interesting. So you have the Israeli women who are fearful to birth sons. So what happened is the mother of Moses, let me see here. He came from the house of Eli. When she bore the son, when this lady from Levite bore the son, she took him down to the riverbed and essentially wrapped him up in this cloak and left him there. And then the daughter of the Pharaoh, right, which doesn't like Hebrew or Israel, children, male children for that matter. Now the daughter of the Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young woman walked beside the river. She saw a basket among the reeds, and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw a child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to the Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go call you a nurse for a Hebrew woman to nurse the child for you?" And the Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, because she said, "I drew him out of the water." So now you have the introduction of Moses, very popular character in the Bible, somebody we oftentimes hear about. So now we're getting into the section where Moses actually flees Midian. One second. And if you remember, Midian is down here. You have the land of Canaan up here, which is where Isaac, which is pretty much where all this stuff started. Well, where some of the main characters came from, the land of Canaan. Now you have Midian down here. Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. Okay, so one day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating the Hebrew, one of his people. That's right. He looked this way and that way, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man, "Why do you strike your companion?" He answered, "Who made you prince and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, okay, so what you have here is Moses killed an Egyptian um, who was attacking two Hebrews. So the next day, he came out, and the two other Hebrews asked him the question, "Hey, so why did you kill your own man?" Essentially, because you grew up under the Pharaoh's rule, under the daughter of the Pharaoh, right? Which makes sense. And so the moment that they asked him, that was the moment that Moses realized he needed to get the heck out of there, because if those two people knew, um, then uh, then surely everybody else knew, and if the Pharaoh was to know, and or Moses' adopted mother was to find out the Pharaoh's daughter, that would probably be a lot of trouble. Um, and so now we go into God hearing Israel's groaning. Israel is like the Pharaoh mentioned, shrewdly we are going to treat these people, and they made them all slaves. So during those many years, during those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob, which are some of the original characters of the world, of life, according to the Bible. The burning bush. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire amidst the bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, "I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned." When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." And he said, "Here I am." Then he said, "Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." He said, "I am God. I am God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, "I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and a place of the Canaanites and the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Havites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to the Pharaoh, and you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh and bring children of Israel out of Egypt?" He said, "But I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. You have brought the people out of Egypt. You shall serve God on this mountain." And so anytime in the story in the last 100 pages where there has been a clear expression that God or Lord is going to pretty much bless or be there as a walking person with any of the characters, they all have seen the light. They all have been blessed abundantly with like mentioned here, they all have been blessed with field land of honey and fields of milk. And so Moses is given powerful signs, and Moses then returns back to Egypt. So Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, "Please let me go back to my brothers in Egypt to see whether they are still alive." And Jethro said to Moses, "Go in peace." And the Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all the men who are seeking your life are dead." So at this point in time, the Pharaoh had died. Everybody had kind of subsided, from the time that Moses had struck down the Egyptian. And so now God is telling Moses, "Hey, it's time for you to go back. Don't worry, all your enemies pretty much have passed." So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. And the Lord said to Moses, "When you go back to Egypt, so that you do before the Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to the Pharaoh, 'Thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. I'll refuse to let him go. Behold, I will kill your first son.'" At the lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it, and said, "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me." So throughout the Bible so far, what I've gathered is there have been times when the Lord has tested, or God has tested, the people who are serving him. And so I know early on, I think it was either Abraham or Isaac who were tested by the Lord to kill their own son. I think at this time, I think it might have been Abraham. Was it Abraham? Yeah, because Isaac had multiple children. So so they're tested. The Lord's like, "Okay, I need you to take your son to the top of this mountain and kill him and sacrifice him for me." And so, these people who are serving God have to follow his order, have to follow this rule. And so they go and they go to do it, but then God will come out and say, "Oh, hey, this was a test of faith, by the way. No need to do that." Or have them actually fully execute on something. And so it's really just a test of faith. And so it's I don't know, it's kind of cool to see how things came about like this, because when you translate them now into our personal world, it's kind of like, well, how are we tested with faith? We're not asked to sacrifice our children, right, let's say, per se, but we potentially may be sacrificed to give up partying, right, and drinking, or maybe like infidelity or adultery or whatever it may be. Like we might, and to each his own, obviously no judgment from me when it comes to anything. But at the end of the day, it's like, what are we asked to sacrifice on a daily? And it could be something even smaller, like just spending time to get to know ourselves, right? So what do we sacrifice to do that, to get that? And then, how much time are we giving to the universe? How much time are we giving to people, which pretty much we're extensions of everyone else. Everyone's an extension of us. How are we giving back to people on a daily, and what are we sacrificing to make sure that we are trying to make this world a better place, right? A more loving and peaceful place for everyone. So it's interesting to see, how we can translate those sacrifices into our daily regimen, so that we can improve the world. I just thought about Benjamin. I haven't seen Benjamin in a while. Anybody have a tab on Benjamin? Anyway, so at this point, the Pharaoh is, obviously super taken back by the request of Moses, and he says, "You know what? We're going to make the people of Israel make bricks without straws." Afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to the Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest we fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take people away from their work? Go back to your burdens, or get back to your burdens. And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and you may make them rest from their burdens. The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, you shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks, as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. So now their work just went from being hard to exceptionally hard, because now the Pharaoh's not giving them the tools to build the architecture or the infrastructures that he wants them to do, or the tasks that he wants them to do. So now the people of Israel, in layman's terms, are suffering even more. Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to the Pharaoh, why do you treat why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, make bricks. And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But he said, you are idle. That is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go now and work. No straw will be given to you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks. The foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily tasks each day. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from the Pharaoh, and they said to them, the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of the Pharaoh and his servants, and put a sword in their hand to kill us. Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to the Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all. So, of course, in the natural task, the natural way of things, you start to feel doubt, but you have to just keep faith, and know that whatever that God has promised to us, and in our common time, in our daily time, the universe and God, however you refer to him or refer to the greater power, we all are inherently blessed with the privilege of living the best life we can possibly imagine. Period. That is our blessing. That is our deliverance. That is what God has promised to us, because we are extensions of him. Everything has been sacrificed for our betterment. Okay. Now, if anything, just take the idea of being blessed, and take the idea of, and if you're not relating it to religion or any type of spiritual talk, just take the idea of having that privilege and knowing that you can create a reality that is significant and substantial for yourself. So God promises deliverance. But the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to the Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but my name, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them. I am the Lord. So in other words, the Pharaoh didn't question Jacob when he was able to interpret dreams. He didn't say, "Oh, so Joseph interpreted dreams when he was in prison for two men that he didn't know." And long story short, they were thrown in jail by the Pharaoh. They had these dreams, and the conversation came up between Joseph and these two guys, and they were like, "Hey, we had these dreams. We don't know how to interpret them." And Joseph was blessed with the ability to interpret. He's like, "Okay, Baker, you're going to get killed and hung by the Pharaoh." And then he looked at the other guy who was a cupbearer. He was like, cupbearer, you're going to get your position back with the Pharaoh. And then he said, okay. So then they were released from prison on a whim, right, from the Pharaoh. And then, sure enough, the baker was hung, and the cupbearer actually got his job back. And then so Joseph made them promise that if you get out, you have the Pharaoh come back to me and let me out, because I was wrongfully accused of taking a woman or having, sleeping with a woman who wanted me, but I didn't want her because I was being respectful to the king of the town that I was living in. But she wanted me so bad, she came on to me so bad, and I didn't want her. But so then she made up a lie, and then Joseph got locked up, right? And so they forgot all about Joseph in prison. And then what happens is the Pharaoh had a dream, and nobody can interpret it. And then the cupbearer was like, oh, well, there was a guy who told us about dreams, our dreams, interpreted our dreams. And then that's actually what came to pass. And then, so when the Pharaoh went to Joseph, he pulled him out of prison, and then he told him that, hey, this is what the dream is. And Joseph told him 7 years of 7 years of famine, the worst famine you'll ever experience in Egypt. The Pharaoh immediately promoted him to assistant, like I said, assistant vice president. So my point here is that let me see here. The God Almighty, but my name, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them. Pharaoh didn't need much to understand that the Lord was talking. And so this new Pharaoh, so it's pretty much the third generation Pharaoh is saying, I don't know the Lord. I don't care. I'm going to make these guys suffer. And so now the Lord's saying, well, hey, I am the Lord. And I didn't have to show myself to the other Pharaoh, the first Pharaoh, or to Isaac, essentially to Isaac or Jacob, this, that, and the other. And they knew that when I showed up, I was that guy, right? And so I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with the outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. I am the Lord. Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. So the Lord said to Moses, go and tell the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel get out of his land. But Moses said to the Lord, behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall Pharaoh listen to me? For I am an uncircumcised lip. But the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them charge about the people of Israel, about Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. And tomorrow, actually, I should foreshadow, we're going to talk about the genealogy of Moses and Aaron, and then Moses and Aaron before the Pharaoh. How does all that translate into real life? I would say that moment when you think that you can't do something, second guess and ask yourself again, who is, I can't do this, or this is too challenging, or this is going to take too much time. All of that limited mindset or limited perspective on life, always understand that there's a greater power behind charging, plugged into your back, charging who you are, charging your imagination, charging your abilities. And as we've said many, many times and times again throughout this journey, the universe is incrementally and specifically here to help you manifest the dreams and the life that you wish to live. So knowing that, there should never be a doubt in your mind that you will succeed. There should never be a doubt in your mind that you deserve only the best things, and that you don't deserve, or that you are not entitled to only a life of suffering. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. Moses says, how can I go to the Pharaoh? My own people won't even listen to me. How the Pharaoh's not going to listen to me? And God's like, no, I got you. Don't worry. I know you can't see it right now, but just move forward and make this move. And then the Pharaoh will dismiss all of the people of Israel, all of them, not one, not two, every single person will be dismissed. And they are slaves, slaves. And then, I think about, black slavery in America, that went on for so long, right? And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, man, how did we get delivered from that? How did we get delivered from that? And I don't mean that I'm saying it, I'm saying it as a rhetorical question, but it's like, what? How do we get delivered from being in slavery? You have a mindset that that's okay, and using the Bible as leverage to support these acts of slavery, right? And then slowly and slowly and slowly, the vice and the grip of the oppressed people, was weakened, and then eventually it was broken. Doesn't matter how. Well, it matters how, but my point is I'm not making that point. I'm making the point of, this place of these people that were suppressed, and that were obviously, treated like animals, that were slaves. That mindset slowly and gradually changed. And that actually gives me a lot of hope, because now I'm thinking, it's like, oh, what does this world come to? A lot of people will say, what does this world come to? There's this happening over here. There's this, that hope happening over here. And it's kind of like, if generations and years of slavery, whether it's black slavery, whether it's Jewish being suppressed by Nazi Germany, or whether it's the Hebrews being oppressed by the Egyptians, in BC, before Christ, it's like, it's amazing how a certain group of people, I don't know, I don't know. It's just it's all interesting to me. I don't really know how to put words to it, but hopefully I'm painting the picture big enough that you can kind of draw your own conclusion. But it's amazing how ideology can change through time. And from what I've seen, obviously there's certain levels of suppression still happening where people are being held down, but all over the world, right? But to look at where all of this started, and then now looking at where we are today, and then obviously planning for hundreds of years to come in the future, is actually a very optimistic vision, and I think that's awesome. So with that being said, everybody who jumped on the messenger board this morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for joining me and standing with me in this journey. We have 65 days left. To everybody who's at home watching me behind the camera, thank you for the constant support and love. We only have 65 days left, and year one of the journey to greatness is complete. I hope everybody out there has the best day of their life today. Happy Friday. Today's Friday, right? Yep, today's Friday. Hope everybody out there has the best day of their life today. Happy Friday. And I'll see you tomorrow at 5 a.m. Peace.